Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The NFL Show, as always, is brought to you by Replenishing Care and Technologies. Make sure you check them out at rcandt.com. I am your host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpasser. Now, I would like to welcome in my co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you?
All right, today we're going to preview the Thursday night football matchup between the Bears and the Buccaneers. And then later on, we'll talk about Sam's 2020 year-end awards predictions after about a quarter of the season has been played. But we're going to start off in Chicago, where Week 5 of the 2020 NFL season begins with a nationally televised Thursday night football matchup between two former divisional foes. Of course, that was before Sam was probably born. The Chicago Bears, who are 3-1, will renew their rivalry with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 3-1. The Bears are coming off a tough loss to the Colts that knocked them from the ranks of the unbeaten last Sunday. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay overcame a 10-point halftime deficit to defeat the Chargers. This is a big game with both teams being 3-1. And even though both teams are 3-1, it feels like one team's trending upwards and the other one's on the downward slide, Sam.
Yeah, the Bears have already benched Mitch Trubisky for Nick Foles, which I think we both agreed was going to happen eventually at some point this year. But really, Nick Foles is going to tell you whether or not this Bears season goes anywhere. Because if he plays poorly, if he plays like he did against the Colts for the rest of the year, I mean, we might see Mitch Trubisky back on the field before the end of the season, and that's how it goes. I think there's a chance that Chicago switches back to him. And either way, I don't think it matters who they play at quarterback. Either one of those two, I think they could collapse here and potentially miss the playoffs.
Yeah, and the Bears picked up their first loss last week against the Colts. They were outplayed on both sides of the ball. And, you could say they looked like nothing like the team that started 3-0, but there was really no wins of any consequence there. And Nick Foles was 26 of 46 for 249, a touchdown, an interception, sacked once. The numbers are deceiving because most of those 249 yards came on the 8 points they scored in the fourth quarter at the end of the game against the Colts prevent defense. When you look at this, I think the big question is Tampa Bay's defense, I don't think, is that bad. Justin Herbert really played well last week against them. But I just don't see how the Bears could score more than 20 points in this game. And I don't think you're going to beat the Bucs doing just that.
The Buccaneers have an offense capable of scoring over 30 points a game easily. And like you said, Chicago, outside of Allen Robinson, I don't think they really have an offensive weapon I'd be afraid of if I was Tampa Bay. I mean, he's the only one you really have to focus on. Everything else would kind of come naturally. I don't think you really need to worry about those guys. And even Nick Foles, I don't know if Nick Foles can maximize the capabilities of someone like Allen Robinson. And one thing that you would have to be afraid of is if when Nick Foles has a really good game, he can throw 4 touchdown passes. That doesn't happen very often, but when he's hot, he's hot. Kind of like a little bit like Ryan Fitzpatrick. So you just have to hope that it's a little bit one of his off days. Man, even if he's playing well, Tampa Bay has so many weapons. I think they'll do good enough to be able to just outgun the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, because you got a running game of Ronald Jones II, Leonard Fournette, who combined for 376 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns through the first 4 games. However, injuries do continue to be a major issue with the Buccaneers. Fournette missed last week because of an ankle injury, while Pro Bowl wide receiver Chris Godwin has missed 2 games because of a concussion, and now, of course, a hamstring injury. And additionally, tight end O.J. Howard, who was third on the team in receiving with 146 yards and second with 2 touchdowns or catches, is out for the rest of the season after tearing his Achilles in the win over the Chargers.
Yeah, I think Evans is also questionable for this upcoming game. I think he's had some stuff he's been dealing with. So really, I mean, this offense, when it's healthy, is one of the best units in the NFL in terms of talent. But they've been struggling to stay healthy. I think they're working through it. At this point, we saw last week Brady kind of connected with Mike Evans. Even without Chris Godwin and Leonard Fournette, they were still playing well. They were still putting up a lot of points. Against the Los Angeles Chargers defense that has a pretty good pass rush. My concern would be if these injuries continue to mount, they won't affect this game that much. But will they affect the Bucs later in the year when they play the Saints again, or when they have to play more competitive teams as they get towards the playoffs? That would be my long-term concern with the injuries in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and the Bucs defense I don't think has been too bad either. A lot of people think maybe it's not because of the 31 points they gave up last week, but they're ranked 4th in total defense. They're tied for 8th in scoring defense and are 2nd against the run. They also are 3rd in the league in sacks with 14, 2nd in takeaways with 8. So I think the Bears offense is going to have their hands full. I think this Bucs defense is really underrated.
Yeah, they really are. And they have guys who are playing at Pro Bowl levels. They have Shaq Barrett. Obviously, Levante David has been one of the most overlooked players in the NFL for the past maybe 7 or 8 years. Devin White is in his second season. He's playing well. Vita Vea is one of the best nose tackles. And Ndamukong Suh, for all the crap he's gotten about being old or washed up, he's still a very viable player for Tampa Bay. That defensive front has been great. The issues we've always talked about, has been the secondary. But with Antoine Winfield Jr. back there, they have a little bit of bite to them, and they're not playing terribly. They can probably survive with this secondary and still win a Super Bowl.
All right, Sam. So who are you picking tonight?
I think it's pretty simple. I'm going Tampa Bay. I do think there's a slight chance that Nick Foles comes out there and gets Tom Brady one more time, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, the last time Nick Foles got Tom Brady, it was with the Philadelphia Eagles and a really good football team. Not the same instance here. I think that the Buccaneers pull away in the second half, win this game, something like 31-17.
Yeah, Tampa Bay's got started kind of slow the past 2 weeks. I've noticed they're not always a quick out of the gate team. Sometimes Kansas City's been like that in the past. Tampa Bay really hasn't been that this year. I think their team that is more of a second half team. Honestly, they come alive really when the pressure starts building. They come alive. I think that's when they'll be the best tonight.
All right, now we're going to transition to a topic that you wrote about yesterday on The Grueling Truth, which you can check out the article at thegruelingtruth.com. And that's the NFL 2020 end-of-the-year award predictions after Week 4. Most teams have played 4 games right now, Sam. And I think that is kind of a predictor of where this season's headed. And when we start off at the top and we go most valuable player, who do you look at there?
Right now, it's just one guy to me. It's Russell Wilson. And it kind of has to be him through 4 weeks at the very least because he's leading the NFL in completion percentage, passing touchdowns, and passer rating. I know Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers are playing well. But to me, Russell Wilson's just playing significantly better than all of them at this moment in time, especially because they're winning games. They're undefeated, Seattle Seahawks are, with a bad defense. So Russell Wilson, to me, is doing more than those guys. He means more to his team. And frankly, he deserves this. He really has earned this. He's been in the MVP conversation, I want to say 2 of the last 3 years. This is finally his year to go out there and get the hardware he's wanted for a while.
Who do you think the main contenders are right now?
Josh Allen, just because I think Josh Allen and Buffalo Bills, they're viewed as kind of not an underdog per se, but a team that is overachieving a little bit. Josh Allen has significantly improved his game. They're undefeated at this point in time. If they go out there and they win 13, 12, maybe even 14 games, and Josh Allen continues playing at this level, there's a chance he beats out Russell Wilson because Wilson has hit a wall the past couple of years around like week 10, week 12. His game's dropped off a little bit. If he hits that wall and Josh Allen keeps going, I could see him winning this award.
Yeah, I think it's Josh Allen or Aaron Rodgers right now. And if we're not going with a quarterback, which, you know, the NFL MVP is almost always a quarterback, I would say Alvin Kamara would be the next guy in line that's not a quarterback.
Yeah, that's why I haven't picked my Offensive Player of the Year award right now. I really don't think there's a chance that a non-quarterback wins the MVP this year, but Kamara is the guy. My one concern about him is he's doing so much for their offense right now, about 139 yards from scrimmage per game. Once Michael Thomas comes back, is Alvin Kamara going to start playing less of a role in the passing game? If that's what happens, then really you'll see his production drop off. Maybe you'll see guys like Dalvin Cook sneak in there, or maybe Josh Allen end up winning Offensive Player of the Year while Russell Wilson gets MVP.
So if Russell Wilson's the MVP and he's a quarterback, how could he not be the Offensive Player of the Year?
I mean, I specify this in the article too. This is what happens if the NFL decides to split these awards. Now, my question to you is, should they split them? Because they've done it in the past where they've had Offensive Players of the Year who are much different than the MVP. And to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense because by definition, I mean, if you're the quarterback and you're MVP, you also should be the best offensive player. Is this the NFL just drawing lines to make sure like everyone gets a trophy or make sure like having different people win just makes it more interesting for fans? Is that what they're doing here?
I think it obviously is, Sam. It's what the NFL does. It's what our culture does right now. When we look at the Defensive Player of the Year, I know on your article you've got Myles Garrett. How sure of a thing do you think that is right now?
Not very sure. I'm not very sure that Myles Garrett's going to pull through for this one because there are so many good defensive players in the NFL right now. I do think it'll be a pass rusher. I know in the past, or last year, they had Stephon Gilmore win it, but there were a lot of good pass rushers like Chandler Jones and TJ Watt in there as well. I think we're going to see a sack artist get this year. Myles Garrett was pacing to have a really good year last season before he took Mason Rudolph's helmet off and beat him with it. So assuming he avoids any kind of on-field issue like that, he'll be up there. But I'm also looking at TJ Watt. You can never rule out Aaron Donald. Darius Smith has started very quickly for the Green Bay Packers. And even guys like Chris Jones, Joey Bosa, maybe Bobby Wagner probably have outside shots to get in. But this is a loaded field, and this is far from finishing the Defensive Player of the Year award.
Well, how about this? When you look at this, the guy that stands out to me is Chris Jones. And the reason he stands out to me is there's not too many interior pass rushers that are dominant in the NFL. So I think Chris Jones, as long as he can stay healthy, which I know he had an issue with that last week, but if he's healthy, I think he may be the most valuable defensive player because I think a healthy Chris Jones goes a long way in the Kansas City Chiefs being able to repeat as world champions.
Yeah, they have other good players on defense like Tyrann Mathieu and Frank Clark, but frankly, Chris Jones is the most dominant player on Kansas City's defense. Maybe outside of Aaron Donald, or maybe even more so than Aaron Donald, he's the best interior pass rusher in the NFL. I mean, he has 3.5 sacks through 3 games. He did miss last week, and if he misses another week, that'd be obviously very difficult on his defensive player of the year case. But 3.5 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, 13 total pressures already, and this is through just 3 weeks. So he really does have a significant case. It's hard because I don't know if people will give him the recognition because everyone's so focused on Aaron Donald at defensive tackle position. But really, he's mentioned in this article for a reason. He has a good chance of winning this award.
All right, comeback player of the year. You want to pull out your Homer hat?
Hey, this is legitimate here. I picked Ben Roethlisberger, and I'll defend this spot. I think Ben has played better than any of the other players who are in the running for comeback player of the year at this point. I mean, the other guy everyone will talk about is Cam Newton. Well, he missed a game. He might miss another one because of COVID. And frankly, he's done more damage on the ground than through the air. Ben, on the other hand, has been fairly efficient with his passing. He hasn't turned the ball over a lot. I think he's got more weapons. I think his numbers will look better at the end of the year. And Pittsburgh, frankly, with that dominant defense, we talked about this. If Ben could just avoid turning the ball over, the Steelers will look better in the long run than the Patriots.
Yeah, but the injury Cam Newton's overcoming and the way it's limited the last couple of years to me makes him more impressive. I think that Cam should be right now. And, plus now he's got to overcome COVID too, so that'll help out his case too, won't it?
Yeah, I suppose it will, actually. I didn't think about it that way, but I suppose you have a point there.
And I will tell you this. The comeback player of the year to me is hands down Aldon Smith.
Oh, yeah, I do have him in the article as well. I have him thinking the third part of that. But, yeah, his story, he's been out of the league since, 2015?
He's been out for 5 years. And he comes back 5 years later and is dominant. And he's the only player on Dallas defense. And, he's got 4 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, 22 tackles in 4 games. If this was not a popularity award that gets dominated by quarterbacks, which almost every award is, I think that Aldon Smith hands down is. Because Big Ben missed last year, Cam missed last year. Aldon Smith missed the last 5 years. And I think when you look at that, I think this is definitely Aldon Smith. And on top of that, I think if Alex Smith is to come back and even start an NFL football game, he should probably get the comeback player of the year no matter how he plays in that game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Alex Smith sees the field. He's going to be the feel-good story of the year. And also, not just the feel-good story, all the effort he has to put in behind the scenes to get back to this point. He almost lost his leg. And be able to come out and potentially play football again. He's the number 2 on Washington depth chart. All he needs is for Kyle Allen to go out and throw 3 interceptions in a game. And suddenly we might have to see Alex Smith starting football games again.
Which Kyle Allen is fully capable of doing, by the way.
He proved it last year. He's fully capable of it. You're right. The thing with Aldon Smith is, imagine what would have happened if Aldon Smith had been able to avoid substance abuse, been able to stay in the NFL. Through the first 2 years of his career, he had 35.5 sacks in the first 2 years.
He was on track to be a Hall of Fame football player.
Oh, yeah. The way he was going, he could have retired after 6 seasons and probably still have a Hall of Fame chance. He would have been much farther ahead in his career than someone like Khalil Mack or Chandler Jones is right now. He would have been light years ahead of those guys.
Well, he's a better player than both of those guys.
I'm not going to dispute that. Look at the numbers from the first 2 years of his career. He was significantly better than I would argue Khalil Mack has ever been.
All right, next up, we have the Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I got Sean McDermott as Coach of the Year, and this is one that, obviously you're talking about the best coach in football would be Bill Belichick. Would have been Bill Belichick for the last 20 years. But to me, Sean McDermott, the Bills were supposed to inherit the AFC East when Tom Brady left. They were supposed to go out there and win it, but nothing was guaranteed. The Patriots still have Bill Belichick and brought in Cam Newton. To me, the Bills have gone out there. They have seized control of this division. Josh Allen's playing incredibly well. And Sean McDermott deserves props for what he's done over the past 2 years, turning a team that was otherwise fairly lackluster into a playoff caliber team that could win 12 or 14 games this year.
All right. Who are your main contenders for him or with him right now?
I already mentioned Bill Belichick. To me, if they win 10 games with their current roster, I would say Bill Belichick has a really good chance to win it, and he probably should if they get that many. Just based on the fact that you lose Tom Brady, who's supposedly the greatest player of all time, you would assume that would have a major impact on your team. But if they go out there with Cam missing 1 or 2 weeks and still get to 10 wins, that would be huge to me. And otherwise, looking through the other coaches out there, I mean, I would say Mike Vrabel if the Titans made a really good run here and they won 14 or 12 games. But again, I don't know with COVID-19 what the Titans are going to experience here in the next coming weeks, so I wouldn't know really where he stands. But he's another one I'd be looking at.
What about Kevin Stefanski? The Browns are 3-1.
You know, if Kevin Stefanski wins 9 games and gets to 9-7, maybe he should win the award if they can get a winning record.
Well, he's got a shot then. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think this is hands down Joe Burrow. I assume you agree. Since I look at this, the one guy that I think could throw something in here is Justin Jefferson if he continues to perform like he did last week.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Jefferson has 2 back-to-back 100-yard games. He's been very good for them in Minnesota. And really, we talked about him before the start of the year, where we thought maybe he could be the best receiver from this class. He's proving it so far. He's outperformed CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and certainly Henry Ruggs at this point. This is a guy who, if he keeps up this pace, he will be a Pro Bowler as a rookie. I don't think he'll win the Rookie of the Year award because it's a quarterback's league. Let's face it, he'll go to a quarterback, and Joe Burrow is playing significantly better with the Cincinnati Bengals right now. But I wouldn't rule out Justin Jefferson. I wouldn't rule out Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
All right, Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I got Chase Young, but I think this is definitely a 2-man race. Chase Young's the one person I'm looking at. He's only played, I think, 3 games, even though it's really 2.5. He already has, I think, 2.5 sacks. He's looking very dominant for them. He's already the best player on that defensive front in Washington. But to me, Antoine Winfield Jr., if Chase Young misses, let's say, 4 or 5 games and Antoine Winfield Jr. continues to play well, he's basically the only piece to me that is really meaningful in that Tampa Bay secondary. He does a little bit of everything. He's not necessarily a ball hawk. He's not going to sit back there like an Earl Thomas and get 5 or 6 picks a year. He's not going to do that. But he's more of a Jamal Adams to me. He does a little bit of everything for you. He can rush the passer, force fumbles, make the hard tackles that a lot of defensive backs avoid. To me, Winfield Jr. is a legitimate Defensive Player of the Year candidate, or Rookie Defensive Player of the Year candidate.
All right, Sam. So who plays at the Super Bowl and who wins it?
You know what? I'm going to take – it comes down to really Kansas City and Buffalo in the AFC. I'm going to take Kansas City because I trust Patrick Mahomes more than I trust Josh Allen. Because Josh Allen hasn't won a playoff game yet, no matter how clutch you think he is for beating the Miami Dolphins and the Los Angeles Rams.
Is that directed at me?
What?
Is that directed at me?
No, not at all.
Well, it shouldn't be because you're the one that said Josh Allen sucked, and he obviously doesn't.
Oh, look, all right, you look at the numbers from last year. You thought I played last year. It was a very different scenario, but you're right. He is, like I said, he is a legit MVP candidate, but the Bills, to me, are going to have to prove it every step of the way because Josh Allen hasn't won a playoff game yet. I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at Josh Allen's stats. 42 touchdowns, 22 picks in 3 years is not that bad.
No, but I mean, cut out the 12 touchdowns from this earlier this year. It was 32 and 21 before that.
His career record as a starter is 19-12.
Yeah, but he hasn't won a playoff game yet. He completed
last year for the season, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. This year, 12 touchdowns, 1 interception. I don't know. I don't see why you hate him so much, but he is 14-6 in the last 20 games he started. He did take his team to the playoffs, but I can see why you hate him.
He completed under 60% of his pass attempts last year, and he did not perform well. He shrunk in the spotlight against the Houston Texans in the playoff game. I'm saying this. He is a great player this year. He's been elite this year. But he has to prove it to me. He has to prove everything to me. I'm not buying Josh Allen's stock until he actually goes up there.
Sam, who the hell are you?
No one. I'm some guy on the internet with an opinion and a Twitter account.
Terry Bradshaw sucked for a few years too. I mean, Josh Allen is a legit NFL quarterback who last year was not. I guarantee you this: if you give him Stephon Diggs in that playoff game last year, he probably makes the play and he wins the game.
Maybe he does. But last year, he didn't look this way to me. He was in the bottom 10 of my quarterback power rankings every week last year.
Yeah, and it shows what the hell you know, because now you get him into top 5 after just a few games.
Yeah. I mean, he's proven me wrong, but like I said, I'm going to go down on this ship. I'm going to keep going with Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen in Buffalo.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that you are now saying last year you said he was one of the 10 worst quarterbacks. Now the biggest shot you can take at him is you think Kansas City will beat Buffalo in the AFC Championship game.
Hey, listen, this is probably one of the worst things I've ever been wrong about when it comes to the NFL. I've been wrong about a bunch of stuff. This is by far the worst one, I think, so far.
I don't know. I mean, you did think the Denver Broncos were going to be a playoff team this year.
I did not predict all the injuries that were going to happen to them. I agree. They wouldn't have gotten that far anyways.
I will tell you this, even without the injuries, the Denver Broncos would not be any good.
No, they wouldn't be. I recognize that now.
So you have more faith in Drew Lock than you do Josh Allen.
In a weird way, I guess that's correct. But I am reversing.
Can you admit, when you think about that sounds kind of stupid right now?
Stupid's a very harsh word, Mike. I would say.
How about ignorant? Is that less harsh?
Ignorance better. Yeah, ignorance sounds much better. But yeah, I would admit I screwed that one up a little bit. I evaluated that one wrong. Josh Allen clearly has outdone Drew Lock, and the Buffalo Bills are significantly better than Denver Broncos.
Most people have outdone Drew Lock that have ever played in the NFL, and most people that ever played in the NFL will outdo Drew Lock because he's not any good. That's my guy that I don't think can play. So,
well, you're better at picking this than I am. You know more about quarterbacks than I do, clearly.
Clearly. Don't forget that either. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Remember, you can follow Sam Teets at SamTeets33. Tomorrow we'll have Steve Rizzer on as our guest picker. As me and Sam will pick all the games for Sunday, Week 5 in the NFL. You can follow me at Grueling Truth. So for now, for Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to and watching The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.